gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Hello and welcome to this edition of Political Smackdown. We have our regular crew with us today. We have Mike Philbeck to my right, to my left, Wes Westmoreland, and to my extreme left, Andy Deadman. And I'm Betsy Wells, your host. Before we get into the show today, we do want to extend our deepest sympathy from the Political Smackdown family to Carrie Melton, our Assistant County Manager, in the untimely death of her husband, Chris Melton, this past week. We're very, very sorry to get this sad news. And Chris is the son, too, of Don Melton, who is the chair of our water board. But our sympathies with you, Carrie, and your whole family. And then moving on, before we begin our political discussion today, we're going to talk a little bit about our civil rights history. I want to honor the memory of one of our civil rights leaders, Mr. Haywood Holmesley, who died this week. Mr. Holmesley was one of the African-American students from Cleveland High School who staged a sit-in at the food counter of Smith's Drug in Shelby on February the 18th, 1960, and that was after the Greensboro AT&T sit-in. He was always a leader in our community. He became a school counselor at Crest and a civil rights activist. He was present when the Civil Rights Trail plaque was installed on Marion Street under the leadership of Mayor Stan Anthony a few years ago. We were very saddened to hear of Mr. Holmesley's death, and we also extend our sympathy to his family. Any comments from guys about Mr. Holmesley?
Well, I'll just say he certainly lived a good life and made a big contribution to our community. I didn't know Haywood well. I met him several times through the years, a good bit older than me, so I was only like 7 whenever he was doing that sit-in, but I did meet him a few times through the years, and condolences to his family.
Well, when you start to think, Betsy, we lose so much history.
Yes.
I mean, just think about what he actually was there in the making of history. And it makes things, especially after we lost Dean, that you stop and think about all the history that they have been around and involved in personally, and we don't have it anymore because most of these folks, they don't write it down.
All right, Wes?
And thank goodness we've got the trail marker up and the window display, because you're right, that is getting lost. And even my generation didn't experience all the turmoil of the civil rights. And we maybe from a distance, but we've had to go back and learn it. And that's a lesson America should never forget.
And you know, we've lost Mr. Roper, M.L. Campbell, Reverend DeVoe. I mean, many of them that, you know, to age. And Haywood also was the head of, he organized our African American caucus within the Democratic Party when the county party decided, and through the state, to have one, and worked very hard to mobilize Black Americans, citizens, to get out to vote. But we certainly will miss Haywood Holmesley. He spoke at our retired educators meeting after that plaque was there, put there on Marion Street, and he really gave us a good history. And I hope that several of us that were there will remember it. But again, our condolences to Mr. Haywood Holmesley's family. All right, now I don't think we have a thing to talk about politics. What do you guys think? Much speculation and news about the Democratic candidate that Kamala Harris is going to select as a running mate was in this week. Our own Governor Roy Cooper made it to the short rows. All those of you that are in farming backgrounds, you'll know what short rows are. Anyway, but he was in the top 5 choices, but he withdrew. The announcement has been made that the Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is her choice for vice president. Trump and the Republican Party are scrambling to see what dirt can be dug up against this popular governor, former U.S. congressman, a former high school teacher and a winning coach, a former Army National Guard veteran, a teetotaler after getting the DUI in his 30s, an advocate for equal rights, an advocate for reasonable gun control, although a hunter, a great sense of humor. He's the one that called some Republicans weird. And, you know, I don't know where he would have gotten that idea unless he looked at this guy from the January 6th insurrection. The list goes on and on. What do you think? Wes, let you begin.
I think he's probably a great guy and would be a great next door neighbor. But I am embarrassed for you and Andy over this pick. The only thing worse would have been AOC or another member of the squad.
Oh, me.
His economic record in Minnesota is as bad as the Biden-Harris administration's for the country. Betsy had a low unemployment rate, 2.9%, and as you often tout Biden's job numbers, the state has added 41,500 jobs under his leadership. But the job growth has come from government spending. While they've created 41,000 jobs, he's added 56,500 new government healthcare and social assistance program positions. Meanwhile, manufacturing has lost 7,500 jobs, as have other private sectors. Meantime, his office saw the largest theft of taxpayer money during COVID-19. Even FDI Director Christopher Wray called it the largest pandemic relief fraud scheme yet, all the while forcing 5-year-olds and children to wear masks and stay out of school. Of course, it's a sanctuary state, making the illegals as welcome as he can possibly be, providing driver's licenses, free health care, free college tuition, and to pay for all this, he raised taxes on cars, gas, and retail deliveries. And I'll let one of the rest of you talk about what he called his most abject failure in letting the state burn during the summer of 2020.
Oh, Andy, we knew he was going to be negative. That's why we started off with Wes. Now bring us back to
I
the
wasn't
positive
negative.
and to the joy that's now in the ticket.
Well, I mean, the governor is a very interesting guy. He's kind of, some things, I mean, he is an avid hunter, the football coach, many long-term serving in Congress. And I think it's smart that you're able to get a governor because you've got to have somebody with some executive background to be able to do the job if they're pressed into service as president. I still think Shapiro in Pennsylvania would have been the superior candidate, I think, because how badly we need Pennsylvania. I mean, that would have just about been a lot. I mean, Shapiro's got like a 64% approval rating in Pennsylvania. So, I mean, he was very well liked, just about could have just put a lock on Pennsylvania. And let's face it, when you get it's political calculus at its finest when you get to the presidential level, everything makes a difference. And, you know, there's some hope that maybe with the governor being from Minnesota, that he does border on some other states such as Wisconsin and some of the other ones that we do need also. So it's kind of, like I said, it's kind of a mixed grab bag. I think he's not as bad as we could have had Wes. So,
He's pretty close.
well, no, he's
Shapiro
still
would have been far
Who
smarter.
was on our list that would have been more to the left?
Buttigieg.
Buttigieg's.
Yeah, Buttigieg.
Yeah, I think that would have been, and I mean, I want to give him a benefit of the doubt. Let's see how he does. I think he does seem to have a very good sense of humor. He meets the public very well. So, but he's like everybody else. He's got a track record, and I'm sure Republicans will lambast him on everything coming and going. And I'm sure Mr. Philbeck has a laundry list as long as his arms. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get it started, Mike.
All right, Mike.
Well, I will move to the public safety aspect. As the cities burned in Minnesota, due to the riots after the George Floyd very bad thing where a police officer actually did go to jail. But he stood by and did nothing. And the mayor requested the National Guard, and Waltz didn't send them. And as Wes noted, he later said that was a mistake. But under his watch, there's been a lot of bad stuff happened in Minnesota. Biggest thing is the number of murders in Minnesota is up 73%. So there's a graph beginning in 2019. Floyd was in 2020. And look at 21, 22, and 23, and then 24 is just through August, so it's going to be right up there. Look at the car thefts. Last year, 7,600. Go back to 2019, it was 2,900. But he has been soft on crime. He's been a part of the defund the police movement of the left wing of the Democratic Party, and he's just been soft on crime. He issued an executive order making Minnesota a sanctuary state for children seeking puberty blockers and surgical gender transition procedures. A parent has no control in Minnesota on a child under 18 who is got gender confusion, and they can make lifelong decisions because of a bill or an executive order that he did. He supports letting biological men play in girls' sports in Minnesota. He's been endorsed by radical gun control groups that don't just want to do away with AK-15s, they want to do away with guns. He opposes photo IDs for voting, and he has signed a bill allowing convicted felons to vote before probation or parole. He's just a far out guy. You want to talk about somebody that's weird, Betsy? This guy is weird.
No, this guy is not weird. And now I'll admit, I'd never heard that when you go to the state fair in Minnesota that you can do carvings out of cheese. No, it's butter, out of butter. And he was sitting there carving his block of butter, and it came out to be a school bus. I think it's great that he went to public schools. He's not an Ivy Leaguer. He's more like a common, ordinary person. He's from the Midwest. I mean, he taught 20 years in high school and coached. And some of the criticism says that he looks older than he is, but like he says, if you have handled high school students in the at the lunchroom for 20 years, you'll look older than you will or not.
That's what really surprised me, Betsy. I thought he was older than I was, because I was really getting after it. Then found out he's 60. I'm older than he is.
But that's another thing about Shapiro. He would have brought generational change, which is something our young people are looking for on both sides.
Well, but the other thing, too, what Michael said, the thing of it is, you got to remember, when the governor ran for Congress the first time, he threw out an incumbent Republican, and he held that seat all those years. And until he decided to run for governor, Republicans never could get it till he got out of the way. So there must be something there that people like. And yeah, I mean, everybody's got a governor, and sometimes they'll do some things that maybe we don't all agree with.
If you don't look at issues, he does have a good personality. There's no question about that.
Personality, sense of humor, gray hair.
Yeah, I don't deny that
20
he's got
years
all
service
that.
in the school system, that's all
But on
wonderful.
the issues, he's terrible for individual liberty.
Well, and you know, Kamala Harris has to be pick someone that she felt good and easy with. And you know, what is it the vice president does? No harm. And so I think that he will energize. They're bringing in record numbers of people to the arenas to hear them. They did not get to come to Raleigh on the 8th. I was ready to go on Thursday, but because of the storm. But they'll be back in North Carolina.
Well, and part of the problem, too, that she had with Shapiro is that he had a lot of people out publicly pushing him. And she got kind of irritated about that.
Well, you know, it's her choice.
Yep,
and so we have more to talk about, but it's time for us to take a break. Come back and see the rest of Political Smackdown.
Hey, I'm David Allen, back as armchair quarterback host.
I'm Guy Suttle from C19 TV Sports.
And I'm Rob Rook from KTCBroadcasting.com.
What's in store on the gridiron? Each week we look at all 4 Cleveland County High School football teams, Burns, Crest, Kings Mountain, and Shelby. We will look at what happened the week before and look ahead at what's coming up this week.
And we'll also discuss ACC, SEC, and Gardner-Webb college football.
And of course, the NFL and those Carolina Panthers.
So don't miss another great season of football right here on Armchair Quarterback on C19 TV and online at c19.tv.
Chef Paul Prudhomme once said, "You don't need a silver fork to eat good food." Well, on Cleveland County Kitchen, we don't have a silver fork, but we sure do serve up lots of good food. Hi, I'm Deborah Blanton. I hope you'll join me for the next Cleveland County Kitchen. Each month, we offer a complete farm-to-table experience. We visit local growers, we learn about nutrition, and wrap things up with wonderful meals prepared by our guest chefs. It's a lot of fun. I hope you'll join me for the next Cleveland County Kitchen.
And welcome back. We had a stimulating conversation during our break, but we're ready to move on. But before we leave the national ticket, we have to note the deranged comments from 78-year-old Donald Trump, who is, the candidate for president on the Republican side, 78 years old, the old man. At a recent rally, Trump went on and on about knowing that Kamala Harris was black. It seems that she will be attacked for her skin color, her ethnicity, her laugh. And there's a cartoon, but let's campaign against Kamala Harris on whether or not she's really black instead of all those other issues behind President Trump. Is this fair game? Her sex? Are male presidential candidates elevated in this fashion? And a couple of weeks ago when we talked about her, it was said on this program that she slept her way to the top by one of the people here. And if you look that up, yes, it's in this scurrilous rag on teaparty.org. Back in, she did date Willie Brown, 94, 95, in the early 90s when she was single, and he was an estranged from his wife of 10 years. He did appoint her. He was the mayor of San Francisco and like the Speaker of the House there. He appointed her to 2 commissions. But later on, she went on to win public office in San Francisco and into the state, even into the, was the senator, the United States senator. And so that relationship had ended, and Mr. Brown had helped lots of candidates. And she married Doug Osmoff in 2014. I just don't like, and you can find all kinds of scurrilous things on the internet, which party you want, but I found that to be very awful that was said about her. But she is a woman. Is it different for a woman than a man?
What is a woman?
Oh, well, now we're going to talk about Donald Trump and his escapades. He has the morals of an alley cat.
He knows what a woman is, I promise you.
Yes, I'm sure that Joe Biden said. And he committed adultery with his 3 wives. I mean, the man's been guilty of 34 charges in New York awaiting sentencing. He also was convicted of sexual assault and paid all these millions of dollars. I mean, but I'm going back to this. What do you think, Andy? Is it different for women as it is for men?
It seems like sometimes there does seem to be a double standard. Maybe not quite as bad as it used to be, but I don't understand, Mike. The woman likes to have sex, so that's okay. We know she's not a lesbian, so you can't throw that at her. So, I mean, so we got Wes looked like you getting ready to say, Andy.
I'm just thinking how far we've devolved.
In our conversation?
Well, but here's the thing of it, though. I don't think seriously. Her race really shouldn't factor into it. I mean, is she going to use that to her advantage if she can? Yes, I mean, she's going to. She's going to be black and Indian, because she does have that Asian connection with her mother. So, I don't see that should be that much of an issue because we've got enough stuff out there, just like with the cartoon you put up, Betsy. There are so many issues out there we can be talking about. We don't need to go all the way down to just the crass things that he is saying about her. Talk about her positional issues. And I mean, that's what it should be about. I don't care about anybody's love life or anything else like that. That to me is immaterial at this point. But I just hate to see that for running for the highest office in this country, that this is where we're down to. And it just troubles me.
And I saw on the TV yesterday, the first commercial, and maybe there's more out there, but the one I saw talking about her laugh. And, you know, and they talk about how many teeth she's got. She could be a country music star, her big smile.
She's got a pretty smile.
She does. All right, Wes, you're just waiting to go.
Well, I'm trying to figure out where to start. Andy, I agree, race shouldn't be a factor, but yet for her it was when she didn't pick the Jewish qualified person that would have moderated the candidate to run as her running mate. So race does matter to her. Betsy, caricatures have been part of politics since the beginning of time.
Oh, it has, that's true.
And you're going to continue to see those. But I think Trump's point was that she, like Elizabeth Warren, has over time appeared to choose her race as what was politically beneficial at the time. I don't think it was a criticism of the fact that she's black. It was a criticism of the fact that now she runs as a black candidate.
Well, she was the head of the Black Caucus when she was in law school. I mean, she's never run away from the fact that she's part black.
It's pretty
I'm
obvious.
I'm not arguing the point. I'm saying I think that was Trump's position in making the statement. But I do think you're going to see caricatures of her just like you do about Trump. I think it's going to happen, and I think race should not factor in, and I hate it did for her that she was choosing a candidate to run with her.
Okay, Mike,
Well,
how
I
many
don't,
pages have you
I
got
don't
to talk
have,
about?
I don't have any pages, but I have enough understanding to say something without them. I didn't need any talking points on this one. But I listened to Trump when he was at that Association of Black Journalists and made the statement about all he said was, what I will know is when did she decide she was black? That's what he said. It was a question. Because he pointed out, and I've seen places now where they've played quips of her, where when she ran for the Senate, and there she talked about her being the first Indian woman. And then only later did she talk about being the first black woman. And obviously she has a Jamaican dad and an Indian mother, and she is of some mixed race. And she's actually, I think, quite an attractive person, especially even now at her age now. She's an attractive person. So I don't think it's an issue what her race is, but she has used it herself. And I think Trump's question was not one I would have asked.
Well,
But-
and his campaign staff
but
heard him off.
it wasn't a deranged question. It was just a question. But now her laugh is deplorable.
Well, you know, it's y'all laughed
She
at.
cackles.
I
Well,
really had never paid any attention
well,
to
and
it.
of course it was Hillary's laugh that we
I
heard
I
about.
think you're going to find her handlers are already scaling that laugh back some.
Oh no, but will he see it in
And,
all those commercials? You know, that you had to replace the Joe Biden being a daughtery old
But
man.
I think it's not about race. In North Carolina, Republicans elected a black lieutenant governor. It's not
know,
about race,
to your
it's about
dismay.
issues. And in North Carolina, for the main part, she is out of step. And in many of these swing states, and she's chosen a VP who's even further out of step. It's not about race, it's about issues. It's not about gender, it's about issues.
And his point
Okay.
was about flip-flops.
All right, and moving on, the time just gets away from us, doesn't it? President Biden accomplished a landmark prisoner exchange announced this week with the Russian freeing of Americans Evan Gershkovich, Paul Whelan, Alusu Kumasheva. Gershkovich is the Wall Street Journal reporter. Paul Whelan is the former U.S. Marine. And Alusa Kumasheva is Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, Russian-American editor. All three have been detained in Russia on false charges of espionage. This is a monumental moment in our history, and President Biden and his team should be lauded. These families are so happy to have them back in their arms and family. What do you think, Mike?
Well, I'm happy for the 3 Americans that were released because they were all basically held for invalid reasons. I do have some concern that we have traded true Russian bad guys back to Putin, who could still come back to cause us terrorist or other problems in the future. And I know this is a tough thing, and I know there's been exchanges in the past, but I think there is a philosophical and practical question we have to ask. How will we feel if these released Russian bad guys in prison for all the right reasons come back to terrorize us or our allies in the future?
All right, Andy, quickly.
Well, I think we know who they are, Mike. I mean, that's the one thing, and they're on every kind of list imaginable. And I am sure the CIA will be keeping an eye on them. Yet there's winners and losers always in this sort of thing, and you can look at all kinds of things, but the main thing is Americans are back home now.
All right, Wes, quickly.
I agree. I'm glad Americans are back home, but I think there's still a bigger point than this. Let's not forget that Gershkovich was detained under Biden because the president had shown Putin that he would make significant concessions. Putin learned this in December 22 when Biden exchanged a major Russian arms dealer for the WNBA star Brittany Griner. Gershkovich was detained 3 months later. Again, I'm glad they returned to their families, Betsy, but I'm afraid there'll be more to come from this precedence that's ongoing under this administration.
But like Andy says, they have the names, then they have their DNA, they have everything, and I hope they'll trace them. All right, folks, we're ready to move on to our lightning round. All right, Andy, start us off.
Well, school's getting ready to start, and there's nobody happier than a retired teacher, Betsy. I can tell that. We have here, though, as we prepare, North Carolina teachers spend over $1,300 out of pocket for things they need in their classroom. We're the fourth largest state that does that sort of thing. South Carolina, they get a check for $400 at the beginning of school to help defray some of those costs. I think it's time we try to do something to help our teachers here in North Carolina. It's not right. They should have to put out this kind of money for things they need in the classroom.
Or ask parents to provide them.
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, Mike, what's on your radar?
Well, I'll mention, and we may talk about it in detail next week, but I just learned a few days ago that on as of July 31st, Kings Mountain City Council member David Allen has resigned. He's in his second term, but he's already left. He's doing some consulting and other work, and his public reason, of course, was that he's just super busy, but there may be more reasons than we know. But I hate to see Mr. Allen resign. I think he's a valuable member of that city council.
Okay, all right, Wes?
Well, since I jumped to the front of the line last week, I'll just leave it with today is the 307th day Americans have been held hostage by Hamas.
All right, and mine is pertaining to Simone Biles, who is on the picture there, 27, the greatest gymnast in the world. 4 medals in the Paris Olympics, 3 golds for women's individual all around, women's vault, and team all around, and the silver and floor exercises. She's the oldest gymnast participating in 72 years. She has 11 Olympic career medals. She has 30 World Championships medals. And she's 4 foot, 8 inches tall, and she's from Spring, Texas, which is not a huge town near Houston, raised by her grandparents who officially adopted her, and she is to be lauded and admired, and we are so proud of having her as our major gymnast of the world. And that concludes our show today for Political Smackdown. Thank you for tuning in, and tune in next week for more Political Smackdown.